Incident happened when I was 9 years old. This is an absolutely true story because of which I developed an addiction to women's legs and shoes. I changed the names for reasons of anonymity. So my aunt and I came to the country house to visit our two friends, Jessica and Marga. Several hours went on preparing for dinner and other preparations. And so, by 10 p.m., the table was covered with a tablecloth and various dishes. While we were having dinner, I had to listen to the conversations of adults. During the conversation, Margot said, "Oh, I hit something with my foot there," and lifted the tablecloth to look at it. Following her, everyone, including me, decided to look under the table. We saw a mannequin head on the ground. "Oh my God," said Margot. "Don't be scared. This head is from a recycled mannequin. This head has been lying around for a long time, and I forget to throw it away," said Jessica. "You can use this head as a footstool if you want." Jessica joked, and we all laughed. Margot lightly pressed this head with her foot and said, "Oh, this head is so soft, just like a real one." Jessica answered her, "Yes, it was a medical mannequin that imitates a human head very well." Then Jessica slightly opened the mouth of this head with her leg and said, "There is even a tongue and teeth there, see." Then she closed the mouth of this head with the same leg and added, "Try not to pull the tablecloth, because it slides on the table and everything can fall off it." After that, I ate very quickly and went to look for something more interesting to do than sit at a table with 3 women. Unfortunately, I didn't find anything to do. Then I remembered about this head under the table, and I wanted to look at it closer. I went to the table and tried to get under it, but with the words, "Where are you going?" my aunt stopped me. "I want to play under the table," I replied. Jessica said to me with a smile, "Oh, you shouldn't play there, my dear. It's very dirty there. You will get all dirty. Plus, the tablecloth slides on the table." With the words, "But I really want to," I tried to crawl under the table, but my aunt stopped me. "You were told not to. Obey the adults, otherwise you will be punished with a month of house arrest and without a game console." Margot smiled and added, "It's okay, my dear. I'll buy you any sweets you want later." I want to note that my aunt's friends have always been nice and caring to me. In general, I left there. I did not want such a severe punishment. Damn it, but I really wanted to see and touch this mannequin head, so I plucked up the courage and after a while went back to the table. I sneaked in unnoticed because everyone thought I was playing in the house. After waiting for the right moment, like a ninja, I silently lifted the tablecloth and climbed under the table. And that's what I saw there. Under the center of the table, a battered mannequin head lay sideways and Margot's crossed leg hung over it, shod in sandals with heels, which she periodically shook and touched her head. It was really like the real thing, with very realistic skin and teeth. Cool, I thought, and I wanted to take her to take a picture with her, but Margot's leg prevented me. So I decided to lie down next to her and take a quick photo. After a few photos, I was about to stand up, but Jessica suddenly stretched out her legs and pressed her soles against my ear and cheek. I panicked and accidentally pushed the mannequin's head with my shoulder, which rolled to the side, causing me to almost be in the place of the mannequin's head. I couldn't move because of Jessica's legs pressed against me, wearing open-toed shoes with thick heels. Hanging over my face was Margot's leg, which was wearing sandals with thin heels. I couldn't move, otherwise I would have been discovered and I would have had a lot of problems. After a while, Jessica began to yawn and stretch her legs even further, thus pushing my head closer to Margot. I had to move at the same pace so that I would not be caught. I could hear Jessica's heels grinding on the ground near my ear. Oh my God, this mannequin head moves in my opinion. Margot got scared and put her legs under the chair when I rested her leg with the other ear. Margot tried to lift the tablecloth to look, but because she was a little drunk, she began to sort it out with her hands for a long time, and the tablecloth crawled off the table. I thought that was it. I was finished and they would see me. House arrest for many months, no game console, etc. But Jessica managed to stop the tablecloth and pull it back into place. "Don't touch the tablecloth, otherwise everything will fall off the table right now." This I accidentally kicked her towards you with my feet. Margot replied, "Sorry, I forgot about the tablecloth. Maybe we can remove this head, otherwise I constantly touch it and it becomes somehow awkward." My aunt laughed, so Jessica said it was a footstool. Jessica laughed back, "Yeah, I'll throw it out soon anyway. But if it interferes, let's remove it." Margot sighed and said, "Oh, let him lie." And after a short pause, she coquettishly added, Oh, then today she will kiss my feet." With these words, Margot laughed out loud and sharply put both feet on my face. One sole on my nose, the other on my lips. She put her heels on my cheek. Everyone laughed out loud. My aunt added, "Oh, Margot, you've always been such a queen." To which Margot jokingly replied, "Yes, I'm a queen," and made a sexy pose, which resulted in her twirling her soles on my face, putting a lot of pressure on my nose and lips. I was very scared and didn't know what to do. In principle, there was nothing terrible. It was just unpleasant under Margot's not very clean sandals. It hurt a little to the ear and cheek under Jessica's dirty soles when she sometimes tapped her shoes. After a while, the women forgot about the mannequin, my head, and continued their female conversations. After a couple of minutes, Jessica put her legs under the chair, and I even managed to relax a little. But suddenly Margot, out of boredom, began to roll my head back and forth on the ground, resting her soles on her face, then her heels on my ear and jaw. I had to relax my neck so that Margot could roll my head freely, otherwise I might be detected. With every movement of Margot's legs, her heel was getting closer to my lips, and after a few more movements, I felt how he rested on my lips, which I squeezed as much as possible. But with each new movement, it became more and more difficult for me to compress my lips, and as a result, the heel rested on my teeth, and Margot continued to roll my head on the ground. At some point, Margot interrupted their women's discussion with the phrase, "Oops, it seems my heel has failed somewhere in his head," and again tried to lift the tablecloth to look. But Jessica stopped her again and nervously said, "Your heel must have flown into his mouth. Don't touch the tablecloth." Margot let go of the tablecloth and said, "Oh, right." Jessica was right. The tip of Margot's heel was in my mouth, which I managed to press with my tongue. It was very hard to keep Margot's heel in that position, especially with the tongue. But since I was afraid that it might fall deep into my mouth, I tried very hard. That's because Margot was wearing high heels today, longer than Jessica's. Thank God it lasted a couple of seconds and Margot pulled out her heel. But after a moment, with the words, "Oh, this mannequin has such an elastic mouth," she now deliberately began to stick her heel into my mouth. In order for Margot not to suspect anything, I had to let her do it. I slightly opened my mouth and pressed my tongue. This time she pushed her heel a little deeper into me, and in order to check the elasticity of the mannequin's mouth, she moved her heel back and forth. "Margot, enough about this mannequin already. Let's discuss our topic further," my aunt told her. Margot twirled the heel in my mouth a little more, pulled it out and put the sole back on my lips, and then said, "Okay, what were we discussing there?" I was very scared that she would shove it to me to its full length. The heel is long. I could not stand it and would definitely cough. She would definitely feel it and they would find me. The dirt from Margot's heel remained in my mouth, which I was forced to swallow. The ladies continued to talk about their women's affairs, forgetting about the head of the mannequin, my head. After a couple of minutes, Margot rolled my head as far away from her as possible and put her left foot on my ear and her right foot on her left. So my head became Margot's usual footstool. I was glad at least that she no longer rolled my head on the ground. My face was turned towards Jessica's legs, which she had tucked under the chair. In this position, I lay for quite a long time, so I could only see Jessica's legs. There was a lot of dirt stuck to Jessica's heels, and some sort of debris stuck to their tips. After a little more time, Jessica suddenly stretched her legs in my direction and accidentally rested her soles on my face. But she became uncomfortable and she immediately removed them. "Let's move that head away. I want to stretch my legs, but she bothers me," Jessica said and began to push my head to the side. I was so glad that they would finally leave me alone and that I would just sit quietly away from their feet and then quietly leave.
My sister Heather had always been what my mother called a clothes horse. She was always very concerned with the way that she looked, even around the house. Her makeup had to be perfect. Her clothes had to be top-notch and very expensive. Her long curly blonde hair was always ready to be photographed. She is 6 years older than me, and I grew up watching her and her friends labor over looking like a model. I had been interested in trampoline since before I was in kindergarten, mostly because of the things she had done to me. When I was barely old enough to walk, and she was 7 or 8, she would pin me under her feet while she sat on the couch and rub my face and chest with them while she looked down at me and giggled. As I got older and tougher, she found it fun to be the older sister and would do mean things to me, the same way all older sisters do. Eventually, she began stepping on me as she walked through a room or got up to do something. She thought it would make me mad, but I began enjoying it more and more. By the time she was 13 or 14, she had a huge closet full of shoes. Nearly any type of pump, sandal, sneaker, and clog imaginable, with every type of heel from small chunky cowgirl boots to a pair of cream-colored slingbacks with 4-inch heels that were thinner than pencils. I used to set myself up to be stepped on by her, and it wasn't very difficult because it seemed that often all I needed to do was to be in the room, and she'd find a way to do it. I'd lie on the floor watching TV, which I always did, and she'd come into the room and tell me to slide next to the bookcase for a minute. Of course, I would, and she would step up onto my little body, putting full weight on whatever shoes she was wearing at the time and pretend to look for something up on the top shelf. I'd hear her whisper, "Where the heck is it?" And she'd take a few steps up or down as if searching. Eventually, she simply had to figure out that I actually enjoyed it. As I'd long hoped, her friends would get into the action too. For example, Heather and her best friend Kristen were in the kitchen one afternoon looking in the cupboard for something to make for lunch when I happened to stroll through the room. Heather saw me and told me that they couldn't see what was in the back, and so I should come over and lie down in front of the counter. I knew instantly what was going to happen and almost dove to the floor in front of them. Heather was wearing those wooden Dr. Skull sandals that were so popular then, and Kristen had on a pair of flat summer sandals. I stretched out, face up, and they both immediately stepped onto me. Heather's little skull's heels pressing into my chest and Kristen's sandals sinking into my young stomach and hips. It was so casual for them to walk and jump on me because my sister and nearly all of her friends had done it 1,000 times. They knew I liked it and they thought it was funny. The greatest experience ever was during my sister's sweet 16th birthday party. All of her closest friends were at our house for the celebration, and since most of them were obsessed with looking better than everyone else, it was quite heels. The new girls didn't believe this story, but the regulars backed up every detail. He likes it. I was so excited because this was the first time I heard them admit that they knew I liked it. I immediately went back into the dining room feeling this was the perfect opportunity. As soon as I entered, Amy, the cruelest trampler of the bunch, spoke to me. "Hey, we thought of a game. We're gonna play Follow the Leader. You want to play?" "Sure," I said. I knew it was going to happen and I felt like I was going to vomit from the excitement that just swept through my stomach. "Good," Heather added. "Lay down over here." She pointed to the floor next to her. I quickly walked over to her and sat down. I looked around and saw that every single girl was smiling. Heather came and stood next to me and I lay on my back. She held onto the back of one of the dining room chairs, grinned and hopped up onto me with both feet. She had on small heels, but they were very sharp, and I grunted under her weight. I looked at the newer girls while Heather started walking around on my chest. They looked amazed. I heard a mix of gasps and giggles and faintly heard someone say, "God, you're going to kill him." "Nah," she said. "We told you he likes it, right?" She looked down at me and twisted back and forth slightly. All I could do was to grunt and laugh a little. "Okay, follow the leader, remember?" Amy said as she stood and walked over to me and stood between my legs. "Everyone, do what I do." 9 of the girls stood and formed a line behind Amy. Heather stepped off my chest with a loud clack on the hard floor. The rest of the girls remained seated with a look of amazement. We had played this sort of game before, but only with 2 or 3 girls, but not with so many wearing heels. This was going to be something to remember. I was a little afraid, but I couldn't wait for them to start. I didn't have to wait long. "We'll start out easy," Amy said as she stepped up on my hip with her spiked heels made of wood and black leather. She took baby steps on my stomach and chest and hopped off. The rest of the line followed her lead, stepping in the same spots in the same way. Each one of them wore some sort of heels. One was rather chunky and didn't hurt at all, but the rest were very pointy, very sharp, very painful spikes. For the first few rounds, Amy led, and I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to handle it. Before long, I was convinced that I'd be okay and I could relax and enjoy it. As the game went on, and the girls relaxed too, the the leaders changed and the leader would come up with more and more challenging and painful things.
But Margot pressed down hard on my head with her right foot and said, "Well, no, I'm already so used to it, my legs are very comfortable on it," and put her right foot back on her left. Jessica clicked her lips in response and began to place her legs on my face. She fidgeted with her soles on my face and tried to find a comfortable position, but due to the fact that she rested her heels on my face, she could not fully extend her legs. As a result, she felt my lips with her heel and tried to stuff it into my mouth. I was very scared, and I squeezed my lips with all my might. Jessica was a little annoyed. She began to forcefully press her heel on my lips and twist the shoe from side to side. My mouth could not stand such movements and opened, and Jessica immediately drove her heel halfway into my mouth and put her right foot on her left, just like Marga. Jessica finally stretched her legs and sat comfortably. Tears came to my eyes. I was very unpleasant. A thick, dirty heel was bursting my mouth. Because of my saliva, debris had come off the tip of the heel and lay close to my throat. I was afraid to swallow it. Jessica sometimes twirled her heel in my mouth, which caused all the dirt to be cleared by my tongue. At some point, Margot again began to gently roll my head on the ground, which was turned on its side. Jessica was getting annoyed. In order to fix my head, she forcefully pushed her heel into my mouth to the full length. Jessica had medium-length heels. Thank God they didn't reach my throat, but that was enough for her to push the rubbish down my throat, which I was forced to swallow immediately. I began to cry quietly. Two adult women, without knowing it, are tormenting a little boy. In this position, I lay for a long time until Jessica decided to switch legs. She removed her right foot from her left, sharply pulled the heel out of my mouth, and immediately drove the other one to its full length. With her other heel, she rested on my nose as she crossed her left foot over her right. Jessica shoved all the rubbish and dirt from the second heel deep down my throat, which I also had to swallow. I could only endure and look at the first heel, which was now perfectly clean after my mouth. It was clear that Jessica was more cruel to the mannequin head than Margot. At least it seemed so to me, but later a more drunk Margot, with her legs, will convince me that this is not so. I want to assure you that this really happened to me as a child. The circumstances were as follows. 1. The tablecloth is long, which the women did not lift. Jessica asked several times and did not see what was happening under the table. 2. My head didn't feel real to them because they thought it was the head of a medical dummy, so they didn't care. 3. They drank wine and got drunker over time. 4. I was small and stupid, so I thought it was better for me to endure all this than to be caught and punished. After a while, I regretted it. If you are interested, write your questions in the comments. If many of you are interested in what happened next with my head under their feet, I will publish a sequel, because the story does not end there. It was even more severe, as the women were already very drunk.